Baylor has lost its last 10 games in Lubbock. The Bears want to break the streak. The Red Raiders want to keep it alive. This is Locked On Baylor
and Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's Thursday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Baylor and Locked On Texas Tech, a crossover edition this week with the Bears and the Red Raiders meeting in Lubbock. Thank you for making these two shows your first listen every single day, whichever respective fan base you're from. I'm Drake Toll from Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears alongside Casey Cowan. And Casey, the game this week, Texas Tech fans love to rub it into Baylor fans' faces. The Bears have not won in Lubbock since 1990, and I'm guessing that's not going to change on Saturday, right?
You've already lost hope, my man. Don't rule anything out. This is Texas Tech, after all. It's going to be on the other sideline, and we're newly above 500. So we feel like we kind of got a pulse again as far as the win-loss record is concerned. Glad to be doing this with you, Drake. Fan of your show, man. So thanks for having me as a part of this conversation. And I don't know what to expect necessarily, because if the Red Raiders are able to establish something consistent as far as the standard that they were meeting last time out against West Virginia, well, we're going to have to revise some win projections big time, because that's something that probably wasn't there to be expected. I think Tech fans are probably allowing a little bit of a return to earth. There's plenty of respect, obviously, for the Baylor Bears. You've heard Joey McGuire, talk about them as still the Big 12 champs until they give the trophy to somebody else. So I wouldn't be so quick maybe to expect that streak to continue, but I don't know about you, man. I'm just pumped that this conference game is back on these two campuses, and we're getting our turn in Lubbock this time around.
It feels a lot like, to me, Baylor fans have lost not all hope for this game, but the more and more projections come out at 50-50. It feels like every statistical analytical site has this game at basically tied, but you put in the factor of a night game in Lubbock and a road game for Baylor, basically just every fan's going to balk at that. It feels like a lot of Texas Tech fans are riding high after the West Virginia win. You beat Texas a few weeks ago. While the team hasn't found necessarily consistency, there's still a lot there in that blueprint for Joey McGuire. Are Tech fans shocked by how fast this turnaround has happened?
I don't think they're shocked to see a football team that's playing hard enough and being led by a defense that's in games late third quarter into the fourth quarter with an opportunity to win. How many times you can get over that hump still remains to be seen. And if you do it a lot, that may be kind of shocking. But Matt Wells, for whatever he didn't do for Texas Tech football, I do feel like he hardened the culture a little bit, made it a more tough-minded program than what you had under Cliff Kingsbury. They were a more resilient football team, and you hoped that Joey McGuire was going to be able to continue that and build on that. And, of course, I mean, he's walking effort, so that's obviously going to be like a big foundational part of what you're doing as a program. So to see that, I can only speak for myself as a Tech fan. I'm not really surprised to see them continue to play hard and give themselves chances to win, but I do think it's pretty interesting to watch how quickly the belief has set in for the fan base. I can certainly speak to that, because unfortunately we got a lot of practice over the last decade in West Texas as far as coaching turnover is concerned. And, even when you had Cliff Kingsbury show up and there was this honeymoon just because Red Raiders love him because of what he was as a player for the program, the belief was not setting in as quickly as it has for Joey McGuire. I've been amazed to go through this offseason after a bowl win for Tech, granted against an opponent you cared about beating in the Mike Leach-led Mississippi State Bulldogs. But the offseason, you'll talk to Red Raiders, and it's like they paint it as though you're coming off of a great year when you fired your coach. But that's because Joey McGuire, and some credit to Sonny Cumbie on an interim basis, but Joey McGuire stepped in, and he basically forced everyone to mirror his energy, to mirror his buy-in. And that's the thing that's really amazing as far as how quickly something has changed. The fan base entirely rallying around Joey McGuire.
Joey's a guy that I got to spend a lot of time around during his time in Waco, and a lot of people did around here. And it's respect across the way, bar none, between Dave Aranda and McGuire and everybody else here. Nothing but the highest regard for him, and he was a legitimate candidate to get the Baylor job when Aranda got it. Is there any semblance? I've only started to hear this idea thrown out there in the last 24 hours. Any semblance of, Baylor being proven they made the wrong hire by going with Aranda instead of McGuire if Joey McGuire wins in year one against Baylor.
I'm stunned at some of what I'm hearing right now so far. Are you kidding? You got a Big 12 trophy in the case, don't you? I mean,
Dude,
no way.
when I tell you, I actually read an article that said that today, and I was floored. Like, all right, maybe this is an idea that some Texas Tech fans are planting.
I don't think so. I haven't heard that, and certainly that hadn't even crossed my mind. The utmost respect for Dave Aranda, who we're counting as a Red Raider after a graduate degree. Brilliant
I think
mind.
every coach in America at some point in time has stopped through Lubbock without fail.
That's
every
right.
single one.
And enrolled in a class. I mean, it was
Yeah.
incredible. But no, I don't. No, I think Dave Aranda's a great coach. I don't know why any Baylor fan would be down on Dave Aranda. It was shocking that you, again, see coaching turnover in Waco. That's one of the things that's been so amazing to watch from afar, from Briles to Rule, and then on and on. You continue to have elite success, like not just get back to a bowl game, but, hey, we're talking about championship trophies. So I don't know what was a reasonable expectation this year for Coach Aranda and the Baylor Bears, but obviously it's hard to follow and act like that. But no, I don't think there's anything like that within the context of just this singular game. I mean, it's a couple of teams that are trying to continue to fight for postseason berths, and I know that's probably not what Baylor wanted to be talking about at this point in the season, but Tech fans aren't mad at having that conversation right now. So I don't know, man. I think I'm excited for the matchup because I love the shared history of both of these coaches. And to be honest with you, I can speak from a Tech fan's perspective. Either of these guys wearing my team's headset, I'd be thrilled about. So if it was a completely reversed role and McGuire had won a trophy last year in Waco and Dave Aranda was trying to turn it around here, I'd feel the same way, man. I like just about everything about both of these guys.
No, that makes, to me, this rivalry so cordial. As much as these two fan bases probably couldn't be more different, there seems to be just this shared love of the game, even on Twitter, social media across this week. It's just the banter that goes back and forth is wildly playful compared to a Baylor, Texas, or a Texas Tech and A&M, or Texas Tech, Texas. And that's something that goes so far for me that I think starts at the two head coaches and their mutual respect. But for McGuire, what he's been able to do this season, defensively, I don't think I have as many questions, but on the offensive side of the ball, feels like Behren Morton has stepped up to be that guy. I made the case yesterday for Texas Tech to start Donovan Smith just because it'd give Baylor a lot better chance.
I bet.
And Behren Morton has Bear in his name, so I was like, maybe Joey goes with it because of the mojo. But on the Tech side of things, even from SweatBlock Thompson down, it feels like there's a lot of different. You got a 2-3-headed running back scheme, 2-3-headed quarterback, 2-3-headed wide receiver. Like, what is the identity of this team's offense?
I think they're still trying to establish that. I don't think you have a 2 or 3-headed running backs group because it's basically been one guy or the other. There are two in Taj Brooks and SweatBlock Thompson who are reliable, proven commodities on this level. They've been highly impactful for Texas Tech prior to this season. Kind of the frustration up until last week was about the first time that you saw more so of a group day, went over 200 against West Virginia with Brooks leading that effort over the century mark. I think he had around 110 between Thompson and Bryson Donnell. Anyway, that was the best outing for that room of the season. Otherwise, it's been Brooks or Thompson. You haven't really gotten that consistently established. And as far as the quarterback conversation is concerned, it's as bizarre of one as I've seen play out. I'm not buying into multiple quarterbacks being an advantage. I'm a guy that believes if you have more than one, you don't have one, or whatever the saying says. I just biffed that. What is it? If you got more than one, you don't have one, something like that. Aside from Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, I hadn't seen it work out all that well when you're like, nah, how about this guy now? How about this guy? Yeah. We've been fascinated in Lubbock just to listen to Joey McGuire kind of juggle these quarterback situations because it almost seems like there's some transfer portal context to what he's saying as well. Like, you're all still, you got a chance. We want to play all of you. It's Behren Morton or bust in the 806 right now. I think that would be darn near 100% consensus among Texas Tech fans. The offense has looked completely different with him at the helm. Quicker, the tempo is better, more decisive. He's going to make mistakes because he is still green behind the ears. But the arm talent and what I feel like is some of the IQ while the fur is flying, because the offensive line is hit or miss sometimes, maybe trending upwards more recently. But some of what he's been able to do under fire has been really exciting. But no, you're looking for more weeks like what you had last week with the running backs where you can really establish something there with multiple guys. But personally speaking, I don't know if Joey McGuire or Zach Kiley feel this way. I'm looking for that one at the quarterback position. And if he is healthy, Behren Morton is that one. There's no doubt about that.
Morton has shown a lot that would scare Baylor fans or any opposing team. Chip on the shoulder reminds me a lot of when Blake Shapen came in last year, and you're kind of like, who is this kid? And then just tears people up really from jump. And there comes a point, and this was something J.J. Joe, former Baylor quarterback, said on the show earlier this week, that defenses figure you out. You put enough on the tape for a great defensive coach to figure you out for at least one game before you have to readjust. So Baylor fans are certainly hoping that's the case this week with Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts looking at that film. And on your side of things, Casey, I want to get your thoughts, and really Texas Tech fan base as a whole, their thoughts on the Baylor team, what you see in Dave Aranda or Ron Roberts going into this game. But first, I got to tell the folks out there about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Casey, what is your favorite thing about LinkedIn Talent Solutions as someone who knows all too well about the company now that you joined Locked On?
You are cutting straight through the fat, my man. You're getting to the candidates that you want to talk to because they fit your profile. I mean, think about getting bogged down in the weeds out there with so many different options. That's the best thing I think that I've found so far is it's the fastest and easiest way to get to the candidates that you want to talk to.
Purple hashtag hiring frame, Casey. Like, it doesn't get easier when you go to linkedin.com/locked on. It's how I found really half the crew that I use for Friday night high school football games was LinkedIn Talent Solutions, because you can create all these. This little questionnaire narrows it down for you, funnels in. You talked about it, cut straight through the fat. I like it. This whole like West Texas vibe you got going on, we don't get enough of that. We're a little too close to Austin, and it starts kind of to bleed into us.
Yeah.
Not a good thing, by the way.
Lots of
People's
prayers.
Republic. But that LinkedIn Talent Solutions is your spot to find your next hire faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Casey, what are those burning questions that Tech fans have about these Baylor Bears?
You know, I think, and speaking for myself, I'm feeling like defensively, I want to know where the group is that I kind of came to feel like I knew in some recent seasons. I'm still thinking more so about some real toughness in the middle and up front. Is there more vulnerability on the back end? I'm a little surprised by that because if that's the case, because I really have gotten to know Baylor football as black and blue, really mean, really physical, really tough, particularly on the defensive side of the football. Are there some chinks in the armor on that side that weren't there previously?
Yeah, you know, wouldn't you know, the defensive line was supposed to be really good. I don't know if you knew that preseason for Baylor. And really, the defense as a whole is where you expect Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts and this team to put their weight. Dave Aranda, defensive-minded guy. You leave the offense to Jeff Grimes, who's now in a lot of head coaching conversations because of how well he's run the offense in his career, not just at Baylor, but BYU. But now the defense allows 43 points to West Virginia. And I don't know if you knew how many Texas Tech allowed West Virginia to score, but it was a lot less than 43. So
I'll hear it again if you want to tell me, because it's special.
Right. At this point, it's for us Baylor fans, you're scratching your head going, how? How do you have a defense last season with Jalen Petrie, Terrell Bernard, JT Woods? You lose these guys, Jaron McVay, but you get big names back like Siaki Ika. Transfer portal, you get Jackson Player. You get a guy in Josh White, linebacker from LSU, who hasn't played. I mean, redshirt this season, I guess. And there's still so many big names that just haven't stepped into a role that Baylor's expecting. So, look, Casey, I don't know if this team was preseason top 10. Should they have been? That's worth discussion. I've talked to a lot of people who said no. The expectation was just set way too high with the brand new quarterback, but Baylor has not met that expectation, and you got a lot of antsy Baylor fans because of that. But if you win in Lubbock this weekend, I think that conversation really comes to a full stop that this team's finally put it together. But if you lose to Texas Tech, you're looking still at where does this team win 2 more games to get to a bowl? The schedule doesn't get very easy in the Big 12, as you guys know.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You feel like you can't waste any opportunities. And certainly when Texas Tech's talking about playing a home game, you feel like you can't waste those opportunities. But so many things have changed in the game of football. You want to outlaw the physical, violent elements to it, and maybe someday they'll succeed in that. I don't know. It'll just be a entertainment pastime for pacifists or something. But right now, there still is some physicality that's allowed to be involved. It's all about trench work to me every time out. And again, when you're thinking Baylor and some of these really successful seasons, it's not just the defensive side of the football. It's also that offensive line that's doing such heavy work. And Joey McGuire has been talking about that O-line as if it's the best in the Big 12 conference. Said that as a matter of fact. Are they living up to some expectations?
No. They now like we put it real straight here at Locked On Baylor. The answer to that altogether is no. even the first game of the season against Albany, people were scratching their heads saying, what is this offensive line that was the best maybe in the Big 12 last season and brought 4 out of 5 back? And it really has underwhelmed until last week against Kansas. Granted, it's Kansas, but still a much better Kansas team than you're probably used to. But the Baylor offensive line finally put it all together. Khalil Keith is back healthy. And when that unit is playing to its full potential, like it did last season, you see Baylor at full strength. Blake Shapen is a quarterback who's only started 9 games in his college career. He's gotten playing time in 13 games, and he's green behind the ears. This is a guy that needs a comfortable pocket to be able to settle in and make the better throws, just because he still doesn't have the experience of a senior quarterback. So with that, if Baylor's offensive line is able to give it to him, he can connect to his younger wide receiving core that has a lot of names that you've probably never heard of because we're just now learning them. I promise. Every week, someone catches the football, PA guy says his name, and I think, no idea. I had no idea that guy was on the roster. And that's something that it starts with the offensive line giving Blake Shapen time for a young quarterback to connect with young wide receivers. So have they been as advertised to this point? Not yet. Up until last week where it finally clicked against Kansas. And if Baylor's offensive line plays the same way they did last week against Texas Tech, that's the shot that Baylor gets at winning in Lubbock.
I like your answer. I'll be sure to let Joey McGuire and company know this, but
next press conference.
I believe you. I don't know if I believe you.
She's like, hey, Joey, cut it. Cut
no
the BS, man. These guys suck. I know about it. That'd be awesome.
It sounds like a defending Big 12 champion that has stubbed their toe a couple of times is what this sounds like. And you're wanting to lose all hope, but surely not, because there's still a lot of football left to be played. But tell me about, who is it, running Richard Reese, because I'm hearing about lightning in a bottle from this freshman, but I don't know. Is there more on his shoulders than needs to be right now because of some of the other things you're describing?
Yeah, dude. Dick Reese, man, that guy has just been electric for Baylor this season, and unexpected, too. When we did a podcast preseason ranking with John Garcia Jr., Baylor's top 5 freshman, he was nowhere to be found. He's a Belleville kid who, coming from 4A Division II football, really had great stats, great numbers in 4A, but so does every other guy that comes into your program at Texas Tech or Baylor. And so didn't expect him to star like he has, and here he comes last week, 184 yards, has 116 carries this season. 31 of those came in one game, and that was against Kansas last week. So can you lean on Richard Reese this week like you did against Kansas? I don't think so. Not 1 week later, but Baylor might have to if they want to stay in this game. 643 yards and 9 touchdowns, too. That 9 touchdowns for a true freshman really jumps off the page. Yeah. And he's played well, even when the offensive line has been shaky, but you will see him get 30-plus carries if Blake Shapen doesn't have a solid game. And we've seen it goes one game after the next. You just never know with Shapen. Last week, he struggled mightily against Kansas, had 3 turnovers. Baylor won because of the ground game. If he comes out against Texas Tech and turns the ball over 2 or 3 times, number 1, Baylor loses. Number 2, Richard Reese gets 30-plus carries. And that's a recipe for not a lot of long-term success for a kid that is still a true freshman and is built like a true freshman. So he's been a star, but how much can you ride that horse until it's got to be in the stable for a bit? So, I don't know. I think the strategy is to not carry him 31 times against Texas Tech, but you'll see it if that's what it takes for Baylor to win.
That sounded pretty West Texas of you right there, talking about putting a horse in the stable, riding him hard, putting him up wet or something like that.
Hey, I grew up in Arkansas. I've seen mud before.
All right. I don't hear the accent.
No, I had to drop it day one, but hey, whatever.
I really think that's going to be one of the fun things or entertaining parts about this matchup for both fan bases, because I'll tell you from the Tech perspective, I believe that Texas Tech has got an above-average rush defense, which was really difficult to really come to grips with because you saw statistically early on some decent performances, but we were asking on previous editions of Locked On Texas Tech, like, is this to be believed, or are we just getting ready to be hurt again, or what? Because it certainly doesn't come natural here over the last, 25 years or so for Texas Tech to defend the run very well. Aside from a really statistically ugly day in Manhattan, Kansas, where Martinez and Vaughn were breaking off some huge chunk plays, Tech has kind of lived up to being able to mostly limit some opposing ball carriers. And this is a schedule that's already got guys like Mr. Mustard, Bijan Robinson in your rear view. So I think this is going to be one of those games where you're wondering, all right, can you contain a guy that has been as explosive as he's been all season most recently? And if you do, then can you do what you just did most recently as a defense, which was take the football away. They talked about wanting to take it away all year long. You hadn't really done it much, but last week, by far, your most successful day with 4 turnovers against West Virginia, or 4 takeaways against West Virginia. 3 of those, I mean, darn near highlight reel interceptions for 3 different defensive backs. So I would like to imagine that if Tech's rush defense can live up to some potential, maybe contain something on the ground from Baylor, I don't know, do you give yourself a chance at some turnovers? Because you are in as much of a turnover rhythm as you've been at all. You've had some chances, but the numbers hadn't been there until last week.
Take 3. That's the Joey McGuireism, the take 3. And that was at Baylor, pretty big, prevalent thing. You've seen some of the coach speak and one-liners go away because Dave Aranda just has his own that are old hat, new hat, or car references, and just none of them make any sense to the layperson, but they do in Dave's head. And Joey has all those classic Texas high school football, take 3 and middle 8, and that it ingrains in a program. It feels like Texas Tech has bought into that. You saw it against West Virginia too. But Casey, I really just want to take a second to peel it all back and talk about, you already mentioned a little bit, and I love that you alluded to the history of this rivalry, 80 matchups that are 40, 39, and 1. You can't get too much closer than that over the course of history. I would love to break that down and really the atmosphere in Lubbock we'll see Saturday. But first, talking to the folks about SweatBlock. Casey, you big sweater? You big sweat guy?
I'm not a big sweat guy, but I had college roommates who got so heavy into the medicated antiperspirant, they're like singeing their armpit pores closed almost. They've never been the same. So SweatBlock, I mean, they could have really used it at that time. I think about them every time I think about SweatBlock.
Oh, dude! If you got roommates singeing their arm hair, I live in a fraternity house, and we don't even singe pores. That's like next level. And we don't singe pores now because we can use SweatBlock.
Right.
Actually, it's been something that even the last couple of weeks since we've jumped on, I always like to try products out before I can talk about it. And I myself wear dark colors because I sweat. I forgot my SweatBlock today, so that's why I did that. But it is from a doctor who had excessive sweating, so it's doctor created and doctor recommended. And if you're someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat, try SweatBlock, 20% off right now with promo code Locked On. It's locked space on, capital L, capital O. It's sweatblock.com, and is also available on Amazon. Casey, Baylor, Texas Tech, the Butt Bowl this week. This is something that I've asked on Twitter to a lot of fans too, kind of your favorite memory from this rivalry. And mine, being a Baylor student right now, comes recency bias. Last decade or so, there have been some classic matchups. But for you, when you think Baylor and Texas Tech, what do you think?
I got to be honest with you. For a large portion of my life, there was really nothing to think about because it was just all Texas Tech for all of my teenage years. Like, what was it, 14 or 15 that went the wrong way for the Bears at one point? Yeah. It was just a total non-event. Then you get into site matchups. Baylor still wasn't all that good at the beginning of that. Tech wasn't really either, but still Tech fans kind of cared about it. So you go out to Dallas, have a few parties. Then all of a sudden Baylor decides we're going to be really, really good at football. And that part sucked for us. But how about a more recent memory? Okay, that's where I'm going with all of this. Colin Schooler baptizing a man at the goal line in Lubbock, Texas was about as enjoyable of a simple football tackle as I've ever seen. I know you've had some great games over the years, but just to keep it fairly recent here, and that did turn out to be a pretty entertaining game, obviously. That singular moment, I don't know that there have been many more hair stand on end moments within this series for me as a Tech fan. Certainly the more competitive games, and unfortunately not enough of them for my liking going the Red Raiders way, have come more recently, or like over the last decade or so. When I was a kid, it was just a totally different story. And I got to tell you, I enjoy tight games back and forth, but I wouldn't mind rattling off 15 straight or 14 straight again if it's all the same to everybody.
Yeah, I bet Joey McGuire would not either, but Dave Aranda would have a thing or two to say about that. And this matchup has been so evenly matched in the last 5 years or so, too, where you have the double overtime game in Waco or the game at AT&T where I cannot get over Charlie Brewer, like that, the hit at the goal line. Like that still plays in my mind as one of the premier hits of college football that season, on just a terrible year, too, just the worst Baylor football year. And the respect that I have for the Texas Tech fan base too. And I know that not every Baylor fan shares that, but it's guys like you at Locked On Texas Tech and Chris Level that bring that university to life Texas Tech's kind of its own bubble out in West Texas. It's not like your TCU, your SMU, your Baylor or Texas, but in the best way. So what can Baylor fans making the trip out to Lubbock expect out of not just the university or the city, but specifically the atmosphere coming for them in the blackout Saturday night?
Man, it should be a great one because, unfortunately, Texas Tech has been starved, it seems like, for a period of time, extended now, for night games when we used to get them in spades. And it's kind of strange because you almost returned to getting more because you stunk, and Fox moved that big window to noon. So it's like, Oklahoma, you're here. And then Oklahoma's like, well, I'm leaving the conference. Anyway, we're pumped to have a game under the lights because they have been like a rarity, it seems like, for quite some time. All day to get lathered up. Fans are going to be doing that. And Patrick Mahomes is going to be on the building. I know that's going to create an extra buzz just in general, but there's no doubt about it. Having a reigning Big 12 champion coming to town, somebody you care about beating in state. And I think as far as the future of the Big 12 conference, I want these series to really take on some color. I look across this league and you see so many that are just like this one, certainly in the state of Texas, so tight. Tech and Oklahoma State just played there. I think that was the 50th ball game that we played this season. That one was tied going into that one. Now the Cowboys have got a lead. So these things need to be hyped. You need trophies in all directions. Yeah. I don't know about a bronze butt, but the Big Ten's fighting over little jugs and axes, and it makes people care about it. So Oklahoma State got like a bronze tumbleweed, I think, for winning that game. Got the battle for the saddle in the West Texas Championship with the Horned Frogs later on. Embrace, whether it's hate, sports hate, whatever it is, embrace it because these competitive series are what make it so great. So I think Texas Tech is going to fully embrace the chance to get weird Saturday night, Halloween weekend, baby.
Yeah, and I'm sure you saw the clip of J.J. Joe saying earlier this week, toughest place he's ever played was in Lubbock, Texas. Not UT, not Fort Worth, not A&M, not Nebraska, but Lubbock, Texas. And he said that Baylor be battle-tested after a game in Provo, Utah, where you get your feet wet a little bit with that kind of night atmosphere. But I got a feeling the Tech fans will be yelling a little bit worse stuff than the BYU fans were out in Provo. Might be a little more colorful and creative when Baylor shows up on Saturday in Lubbock. But I know everybody here is super excited for it. And Casey, if there's one thing you narrow down that's got you fired up for this one, before we kick it out of here, what is it?
I think it's the chance to continue to remain unbeaten at home. The Jones actually did used to be a tough place for an opponent to play, but unfortunately, we got to go back over a decade to find that era. It was Mike Leach era, and it hasn't been the same since. And I mean, not even close. So far, you've had a nice home run here, and it's made for a second half of the season or a second half of the schedule that is a little bit advantageous as far as 4 of the final 6 are going to be here in Lubbock. You have some really tough teams in your rear view. I want to see that continue, and I think so many Texas Tech fans do. It's been interesting to go to Jones Stadium again this season. You got a chance. So with a win, I mean, that's really going to balloon as we wrap up this regular season. And again, I can't stress it enough, man. I mean, you got hardware in the case more recently, and it's important to beat a team like that. So looking forward to the opportunity.
Yeah, for me, KC, can the Baylor Bears shock me and beat Texas Tech in Lubbock on Saturday night? That's what I've circled, man. It's not that we've lost hope out here, but gosh, it just feels like these night games, road games have not gone Baylor's way, even historically. And so you got to shake that in a matchup that I think is just going to be rocking. So excited for the atmosphere, excited to see how these two teams duke it out on Saturday. And Casey, excited to have you on for a Locked On crossover today.
Yes, sir, man. And if you're in the Hub City, the first Chilton is on me. So you got that ticket anytime, year-round football or otherwise.
Dude, we'll go see a Flatland Cavalry concert. Maybe go see Josh Abbott in the process. I don't know. William Clark Green, all the West Texas hits.
You're touching on a couple I'm into.
Dude, look, West Texas is the best Texas. So I hear in a recent release, actually.
I didn't compel you to say that either, folks. That was entirely voluntarily.
You didn't. The song is just stuck in my head. There's I don't know if you've heard, there's a new release, The Panhandlers, and I can't. It's just there. So I've tried to mute it over the course of this week for sport, but I cannot.
It could become nightmarish depending on the result Saturday night. You may not be singing it in the same tune next week.
Probably not. But hopefully it's the case. For Drake Toll from Locked On Baylor, Casey Cowan, Locked On Texas Tech. Thank you, folks, for making our shows your first listen every single day from your respective fan bases. Go subscribe to one another and go follow us both on Twitter with handles down there. This has been a crossover episode with Locked On Baylor.
and Locked On Texas Tech.